So about a week ago, I made a video about this little nostalgia machine. What I was unprepared for in releasing that video was the rabbit hole that this little thing would cause me to fall down. This device has now fissioned itself into two more portable retro consoles. What have I done? Seriously though, in the past week of use, I've realized that the RG35XX Plus is even more amazing. Quick note before we start that nobody is sponsoring this video. No one provided me this console in any way, shape, or form. I purchased it myself with my own money. And these are my own opinions, thankfully. Good or bad? Good or bad? You're stuck with my opinions in this video. First off, before we dive into the RG35XX Plus, I'm just gonna call it the Plus, or the 35, or the RG from now on. That's just too much for one thing. Let's talk about the price and the ordering options. Much like the video last week, you could buy this direct from the manufacturer and Bernick for $63.99 brand new. There are several color options and storage options available that raises the price slightly depending on what you pick. The way I purchased this, and you could also purchase it that way, is you could buy this via Amazon for about $80-ish brand new. I say ish, and I leave the numbers vague in these videos because of how many third parties are selling these, combined with discounts that every third party has a little bit different, from like 5% to 12% to just whatever. It could be a variance of how much you pay for this at any given time. You can pick from white, black, or gray options, with each of these looks trying to emulate a different nostalgic device. Obviously, gray is trying to be even more Game Boy-like, and it was really hard to pick anything other than that, but I did personally go for the white model. I'm trying to limit my own nostalgia intake to a somewhat healthy level if I can. The Game Boy of this is just like, it's too much for my brain. Under the hood, the Plus is rocking an H700 quad-core ARM Cortex A53 CPU, dual-core G31 M2 GPU, 1GB of DDR4 RAM, 64GB of internal storage, plus the space for 2 micro SD cards, and several Wi-Fi options, either 2.4 GHz or 5 GHz. In the box, you'll get the Plus itself, an instruction manual, a glass screen protector, and the wipes to install it, and a USB-A to USB-C, and a USB-A to USB-C charging cable. Physically, dimension-wise, it's essentially the exact same as the RG35 standard we checked out last week. If there are minute differences or technical differences, I can't see them just using my naked eye looking at the two. On the front of the Plus, you'll get a pretty standard looking D-pad plus action button control scheme. In the middle, you continue to have the operating system menu button. More on this later. On the back, you have the same 4 shoulder/trigger buttons, and for inputs, you have USB-C on the bottom next to the headphone port and a mini HDMI on the top to still export out to a bigger monitor, TV, that sort of thing, if that's your dealio. There was only one way to put a machine like this to the test, so I spent the week playing one of my favorite, if not my actual favorite games of all time, Breath of Fire 3. If you think that's hyperbole, hold on. Here are my 2 physical copies of this game. Look at this. I have 2 of these just because of how good it is. I might actually get a factory sealed one if I decide to really lean into game collection as a hobby next. After a week of playing Breath of Fire 3, what have I liked and disliked about the RG35XX Plus? That's the last time I'm doing that. Well, first off, easily on the top of my favorites is the build quality and the styling. Yes, dimensionally, it's the exact same as the regular RG35, but holy crap, does this white coating, it totally turns this into a different feeling type of device. It doesn't trigger the same nostalgia receptors in my brain. Like, this just looks like the clear plastic reminds me of Game Boys from back in the day, but this looks and feels so much better. I obviously am not the designer or the maker of this console, so I can't say this definitively, but I assume this is made of about the cheapest plastic they can source. Dang, it doesn't really feel cheap at all. It's got a density and a texture to it that makes it feel fantastic in the hand. My general fear when buying tech like this is that it won't have the, gravitas isn't the word, but that it won't feel serious. Look at this. This is a retro console that I made myself, built off of a Raspberry Pi about 8-9 years ago, and it feels pretty bad. Listen. This is what I expect. It's hollow, it feels light, it's just not very good overall. But that's not what you get here in the Plus. The weight of the device makes it feel like a legit console. The buttons also feel great to press. Like, listen to that. This is the reason to buy a console like the RG instead of just playing retro games on your phone. You could say the whole point of this console, without good inputs, there is literally nothing else that this thing offers. The only thing that I noticed in the last week that I didn't like is this rattle. Listen. It doesn't affect the gaming, and it hasn't affected the input. Now that I hear that, I can't unhear it. Another physical thing I dislike is that the battery cover is held in place with a Phillips head screw. Sure, it's not insurmountable to remove, but I'd prefer a latch-based cover. And this is a very small nitpick. If I have to replace the battery, it's more work intensive than swapping out AA's anyway, but I don't know. I just like latches better. You heard it here first. Gary is paid off by Big Latch. The display is also something I've liked after the last week. This has a very similar 3.5-inch 640 by 480 IPS display. I was able to clock this in at around 250 lux of brightness with my light meter. So not the brightest screen ever, but it should be perfectly bright for most gaming applications so long as you're not like gaming outdoors in direct sunlight. You may have some problems there. It's hard for me to be objective on these displays because I distinctly remember, like, I am old enough to have been a kid when the original Game Boy came out in 1989, right? I remember how games felt to play on that. It just skews any display that I see that's better than that one more positively in my brain. So again, my opinions. The only physical thing that I really dislike overall is the speaker. Man, you'd think on the Plus or the Pro or the higher end model, they'd figure out a way to get the sound to actually be decent. If you watch my other tech impressions videos, you'll know I'm not an audiophile or anything. So if something is so noticeable that I mention it, it has to be bad. You pretty much need a set of headphones if you really want good gaming audio to go with the good gaming experience. Holding it comes with the same hurdles as the regular 35. In that, I love the compact size in theory, but when playing, I have to hold my hands can you still see this? I have to hold my hands pretty far apart because it's just too cramped for long gaming sessions. My thumbs start to ache, team. I'm old. Did you not hear that I was around when the original Game Boy came out? I'm old. My thumbs need space. Someone last time mentioned the horizontal 35 series, so I might try that one next. If you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments. Internally and in use, the console is very responsive and plays games mostly the same. The operating system is slightly different on the Plus compared to the regular, giving a few more options for your games and a few different apps this time around. And something else, I didn't even know there was a whole ecosystem about this. I've been reading and following a whole homebrew community modding these things, so I guess games and performance comes down to how much you are willing to put into this device, and it isn't as static as it might be on a main brand console. I've mainly played Breath of Fire 3 over the last week, and everything has gone really well. There were some graphical frame rate things. I'm not sure if that's the console's fault, the emulator's fault, or just how PS1 games in general work. Trying out some more speed-oriented games, everything was smooth, so it might just have been a PS1 thing, but in use, I'm perfectly happy with the performance. One thing though that I don't like between the two is that the menu button menu, that's redundant. The menu on the Plus has so much stuff in it. I would say it's almost an overwhelming amount of options. I like how the regular's menu was pretty straightforward and let me change a few key settings like display brightness or manage my save states, and that was really it. Here, there's just so many things. It's almost overload because I really just want to redo that boss fight that I forgot to heal before we got involved in it. Battery life has been okay. It's certainly not an iPhone Pro Max or Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra levels of life, but I also don't expect these to last a whole work day's worth of use because who has time to play for one of these that long? I certainly don't. I haven't had any appreciable problems where I felt like it dies or that the battery doesn't last long enough for my gaming sessions here. So after a week of use, what do I think overall? I love these little retro consoles. It's a ton of fun that you can carry around and play your games in new, unique ways. Specifically, when we talk about the game that I've been playing, I own a PS3 just so I can play a few key PS1 games. And my PS3 is getting pretty long in the tooth, and it really looks like it could die at any moment. I like that I now have a backup in case I don't have to deal with that worst case scenario. Would I recommend the RG35XX Plus or the regular? In my gaming, I didn't really feel a difference between the two, but I'm also not modding these or pushing them to their absolute limit. That being said, the Plus only cost me $20 more, so maybe it's worth it to have the additional features and capabilities if you feel like you might want it in the future. But if you're just here to play a couple of simple games, I'd get the regular. Honestly, I just can't believe I hadn't seen these things sooner, as I'm really getting obsessed with them in the past couple of weeks. And click here if you want to see the video on the RG35XX. Click. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.